The permission slip was crumpled in my hand, edges bent from the way my son, Caleb, had clutched it all morning. He was only 8, but he'd been buzzing with excitement about the school trip to the History Museum all week. He'd told me about the dinosaur fossils, the planetarium, the bus ride with his classmates. To him, it wasn't just a trip. It was a dream. "Mama," he whispered as we walked into the kitchen, "today's the last day. I have to turn it in with the $5. His voice was soft, hopeful, like he was afraid the world might crush his excitement if he spoke too loudly. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. Dad was at the table, coffee steaming in front of him, newspaper spread out like he was king of the house. Mom stood by the stove, frying bacon just for my sister's kids. Thick slices, the smell filling the air, while Caleb's plate sat empty except for a half piece of cold toast. I swallowed hard and cleared my throat. "Dad, Caleb has a school trip coming up. He needs $5 to go. It's important to him." Dad didn't look up at first. He turned to the page of his newspaper, smirking as though I'd just asked for a fortune. Finally, he set the paper down and leaned back in his chair. $5, huh? For him? His eyes flicked to Caleb like he wasn't even a real person, just some burden at the edge of the table. Caleb shifted in his seat, clutching the slip tighter. "It's just the museum, Grandpa. Everyone's going." Dad reached forward suddenly, ripping the paper right out of Caleb's small hands. The sound of tearing filled the room as he crumpled it into a ball. Caleb gasped, his eyes wide, lips trembling as if the air had been stolen from him. "Your sister's kid deserves memories, not him," Dad barked, tossing the slip into the trash can with a cruel flick of his wrist. My sister Jenna, who had just walked in with her perfect hair and her perfect smirk, laughed as she poured herself orange juice. "He's right. My Emily needs that kind of thing. She actually matters." "Caleb? What does he need a museum for?" "Trash doesn't need fossils. He already lives like one." The twins at her feet burst into giggles, repeating her words like a chorus. "Trash doesn't need fossils. Trash doesn't need fossils." Caleb's eyes brimmed with tears as he whispered, But it was only $5. His little voice cracked, and I thought my heart would shatter into pieces right there. Mom finally turned, spatula in hand, her face hard as stone. "Stop begging, both of you. You embarrass this family every time you open your mouths. Be grateful you've got a roof at all." I froze in place, fury burning in my chest. My son had asked for so little. $5, a single bill in a house where Jenna's kids got brand new tablets for Christmas. $5, but it was too much for them to spare. Caleb pushed his chair back quietly, trying not to make a sound, but the scrape on the floor seemed to echo. He slipped out of the kitchen, shoulders hunched, his small body heavy with defeat. I followed, my own hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from rage I could barely contain. Upstairs, he sat on his bed, his little backpack open, the space where the permission slip should have gone sitting empty. "It's okay, Mama," he whispered, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll just stay behind. They'll forget about me anyway." "No," I said, kneeling in front of him, gripping his hands tightly. "They don't get to decide that. They don't get to tell you who you are." But even as I said it, my mind flashed with Dad's words. "Your sister's child deserves memories, not him." The cruelty of it sank deeper with every heartbeat. It wasn't about money. It was about erasing us. And in that moment, something hardened inside me. I wasn't going to beg again. Not for scraps, not for crumbs, not even for $5. If they wanted to tear down my son's chance at memories, then I'd give them a memory they'd never forget. One that would haunt them every time they dared to look me in the eye. And that night, as Caleb drifted off to sleep, clutching his empty backpack, I stared at the ceiling with fire in my veins. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. The house never spoke of the ripped permission slip again. For them, it was nothing more than another morning, another insult. For me, it was a wound that refused to close. But for Caleb, it was everything. That night, I found him sitting on the floor of his room, his crayons scattered around him. He was drawing his classmates lined up outside a school bus, their faces round and happy, and in the corner he had drawn himself, alone, sitting under a gray cloud. My chest tightened. "Why didn't you draw yourself on the bus?" I asked gently. He shrugged, eyes fixed on the paper. "Because Grandpa said I don't deserve memories." His little voice cracked. Maybe he's right. I gathered him into my arms so tightly he could barely breathe. No, he's not right. He's never been right. You deserve more than all of them combined. He leaned against me, quiet, but his silence was heavier than tears. Downstairs, laughter rattled through the walls. Jenna's kids were playing on their brand new Nintendo while Mom bragged to a neighbor on the phone about buying Emily new ballet shoes. Dad's booming voice carried into every room as he bragged about being a father who gives his family the best. The hypocrisy clung to me like smoke. I knew then, they didn't just want Caleb small, they wanted me small, begging, crawling, always at their mercy, and they thought if they humiliated him enough, it would break me too. But humiliation is a dangerous tool. It cuts deep, but it also sharpens. The next few days, I watched, carefully. I saw how Dad's chest puffed when neighbors stopped by, how his voice softened as he boasted about Jenna's children. I saw how Mom's eyes darted nervously if church friends even hinted at cracks in her perfect mother image. And I saw Jenna's obsession with appearances, the way she posed her kids for photos, bragging about every recital, every toy, every little achievement. It hit me like lightning. Their pride wasn't in themselves. It was in how the world saw them, and pride that fragile? That's exactly where it breaks. So I started laying my groundwork. Not loud, not obvious. Quietly, like the steady drip of water hollowing out stone. At school, I spoke to Caleb's teacher. I didn't tell her everything, not yet, but I let small truths slip. "He's been discouraged," I said softly. "Sometimes he feels like he doesn't belong." Her eyes softened with concern. "No child should feel that way," she murmured. At the grocery store, when neighbors asked how things were, I didn't smile and pretend anymore. I let my silences linger, let my eyes drop just long enough for them to notice. When they pressed, I said only, "It's hard when some children are treated like treasures and others like trash." Then I'd change the subject. It didn't take long. Whispers spread faster than wildfire in this town, and every whisper was another crack in the perfect facade my parents worshipped. At home, I let them believe I was still broken. I cleared dishes without complaint. I kept my head down. I said nothing when Mom accidentally left Caleb out of dinner prayers, or when Jenna sneered that he was lucky just to sit at the same table as real kids. But inside, I was coiling tighter and tighter, waiting for the right moment to strike. It came sooner than I thought. Mom announced we'd be hosting a family dinner for some important neighbors and members of her church. "I want them to see what a strong family looks like," she said proudly. Dad puffed up. "Finally, people will see what kind of father I am, raising successful children." His eyes skipped right over me and landed on Jenna. "She's proof of that." Jenna beamed. "Don't worry, I'll bring photos of Emily's recital. Everyone should see her talent." That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat in the dark with Caleb curled beside me, asleep. I stared at the moon through the window and whispered, "They're going to learn. Not just for me. For you. They're going to learn what happens when you rip away a child's chance at memories." My plan took shape. Not violence, not shouting. Something deeper. Something they'd never recover from. If they thought $5 was too much for my son's memories, then I was going to turn their most precious memories, the ones they clung to, the ones they bragged about, into ashes right in front of them. And when I was done, they wouldn't just lose their pride. They would lose every last ounce of the image they cared about more than their own blood. The night of the dinner came. The house glowed like it had never belonged to me. Polished wood floors, the scent of garlic bread in the oven, candles set at every corner of the long table. Mom fluttered about with her best apron tied tight, her smile fixed like plaster. Dad sat at the head of the table, chest puffed, waiting for his audience. Jenna swanned in, phone already in her hand, her children dressed like they were models in a catalog. Caleb sat next to me at the far corner. His eyes flickered to the feast being set, then to his own empty plate. He whispered, "It's okay, Mama. I'm not hungry." But I saw the lie in his eyes and I squeezed his hand. Tonight, he wouldn't go hungry. Neighbors trickled in, church friends behind them. They greeted warmly, congratulating Mom and Dad on their beautiful family. Dad basked in it, raising his glass before the food was even served. "To family," he boomed, "to the pride of raising children worth remembering." My teeth clenched. Worth remembering. Always them, never Caleb. Dinner began, plates were passed. Jenna boasted about Emily's ballet recital, flipping her phone to show blurry videos, laughing as the guests clapped politely. Dad bragged about how hard he'd worked to provide everything his family needed. Mom nodded sweetly, filling glasses, smiling like a saint. And then it was my turn. I stood, slowly, drawing every eye. "I brought something too," I said, setting a large box on the table. Mom's eyes narrowed instantly. "What are you doing?" she hissed. I ignored her. "Since we're celebrating family, I thought it was time to share some memories of my own." Whispers rustled through the guests. Dad chuckled nervously. "Don't embarrass yourself." I opened the box. Inside weren't photos of smiles or recitals. Instead, I pulled out Caleb's crumpled permission slip, flattened now, but still wrinkled from Dad's fist. "This," I said, holding it high, "is what $5 looked like to my son, a memory he was told he didn't deserve." Gasps rippled through the room. Caleb's eyes widened, his small fists clenched in his lap. Before Mom could cut me off, I set down the next item. Caleb's torn sneakers, the soles split clean through. "These are the shoes he wears while your golden grandchildren walk in brand new ones every season," neighbors murmured. Church friends exchanged uneasy glances. I wasn't done. I pulled out Caleb's empty lunchbox, battered and dented. "This is what he carried to school while Jenna's kids had meals packed like banquets. And when I begged for help, do you know what my father said?" I turned, locking eyes with him. My voice dropped to a cutting whisper. He said, "Your sister's child deserves memories, not him." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Dad slammed his fist down, his face blotchy red. "Lies! She twists everything." But Caleb's small voice cut through, trembling but clear. "He said it, Mama. He ripped the paper. He threw it in the trash." Every head turned. The truth from a child's lips weighed heavier than any denial. Jenna shot up, her voice shrill. "She's jealous. She's always been jealous of me." But I was ready. I pulled out the last thing in the box, a photo album. Not theirs, mine. Pages of pictures I'd taken in secret over the years. Caleb sitting alone at the table while Jenna's kids ate full plates. Caleb in hand-me-down clothes while Emily twirled in new dresses. Caleb drawing dinosaurs on scrap paper while their toys piled high. I turned the album around, slamming it open in front of the guests. "You talk about memories? Look at these. Look at the ones you erased." The guests stared, horror dawning on their faces. Mom's perfect mask cracked as her church friends recoiled. One muttered, "How could you?" Dad tried to roar over the noise, but his voice cracked. "You don't understand. She was always nothing, a mistake, I stepped closer, slamming the crumpled permission slip down in front of him. "Nothing? You stomped on my son's chance at happiness because you think he's nothing? Look around you, Dad. The only nothing here is the respect you just lost." The room erupted. Neighbors whispered furiously. Mom's church friends stood from their seats, shaking their heads in disgust. Jenna tried to snatch the photo album, but one of the women pulled it back, glaring at her. Enough. And then it happened. Dad's chest heaved, his face drained. The weight of the stairs broke him. His knees gave out and he fell, collapsing in front of me. His hands trembled against the floor, his eyes darting up to mine with something I had never seen before. Fear. Shame. Desperation. "Stop," he choked out, his voice hoarse. Please, stop. The same man who had ripped the paper from Caleb's hands now shook at my feet. Caleb watched, his small body pressed against my side. His eyes were wide, but this time not with pain, with understanding. I leaned down just enough for Dad to hear. You said my son didn't deserve memories, but now the only memory anyone here will carry of you is this. And then I turned. I took Caleb's hand, lifted his small backpack onto his shoulders, and walked out the door. Behind us, the house buzzed with whispers, gasps, and the broken sobs of the family that had tried to erase us. For the first time in years, the night air felt light. Caleb squeezed my hand and whispered, "Mama, this feels like a memory I'll never forget." And I knew. We had finally made one of our own. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.